going on, everyone? Adam Gelman here, another video. Today, I want to take some time to go through a few thoughts I have as we start the new year, mainly because, we're about to embark on something that I think is going to be pretty fun, which is the sequel to 2022. In my opinion, 2022 was just an absolute crazy year for wrestling cards. We saw insane ups, insane downs, just a complete roller coaster across the board. But overall, it was one of the most fun times that I've had in wrestling cards. And I've been doing this since 2017. I've been in the hobby since I was a kid. I've been writing my site since like 2007. This was probably one of the best years I've ever had. And when you look forward to 2023, I think there's a lot of reason to be excited for this coming year as well. So I'm going to go through some of the things that, from my perspective, are really going to be the things to watch and things to really be excited about. And then maybe some predictions as well as we get going into some of the new things that are going to happen as Panini enters their second year of this license. So with that, excited to get going, and don't forget to follow me on social media. My Instagram handle is at WWE Gelman. I'm on Twitter at SC Uncensored. You can visit my website, www.sportscardsuncensored.com. I talk about this on Twitter all the time. So if you are looking for a way to get more involved in the wrestling card conversation, this is something that I do regularly. So excited to start sort of discussing what to expect as we, get into a new calendar year, but also like a recognition that things are probably going to change dramatically as we get going. So thanks again. Okay, so let's start with some of the things that will end the 2022 card year and begin the 2023 sort of calendar year, even though they're still part of 2022. For those of you who don't know, like card years don't run on calendar years, and a lot of it has to do with a couple of aspects of things, whether that's the delays themselves in product creation and product delivery, or just the fact that licensing runs on a quarterly basis and whole bunch of other stuff. But there are going to be 2022 wrestling card products that are released in 2023. And I think for a lot of people who are confused, the new card year is likely going to start with 2023 Prism, which I'll get to here in a second. So really the last product that we know of for the 2022 card year is Immaculate, which is going to be coming out on February 8th. I still believe that because we're only at about 7 products, if last count, there could be one more, maybe something really high end. But I think Immaculate could potentially be kind of that exclamation point on the end of 2022 card year. Now, what makes Immaculate so awesome is that this set is delivering some content that I don't think we've seen in wrestling cards yet, which is a couple of different things. One, it is a truly high-end premium configuration similar to Impeccable. So Impeccable was kind of like the first go at a premium configuration, which is like a 1-pack box, 3-pack case. And you get autographs and relics in every pack. So with Immaculate, it's going to be similar, but there's 5 boxes in a case, and I think the first pre-orders we saw were at around $400 a box. In those, you're going to get a combination of base cards, relic cards, auto relic cards, whatever, and autograph cards. But I think this, like Impeccable, it's going to be a completely on-card product. It's going to be one of those products that I think is just going to be completely awesome. It'll be a landmark product in a lot of ways because it's going to have stuff that we've been hoping to see for a long time, which is like those jumbo relics of really cool things that could be associated with the wrestler's persona, like Rhea Ripley's leather jacket that they showed in the preview, or maybe there's some other things that are going to come through. I know that they went and did some cool stuff with relics, and so I think we'll start to see what that looks like as we get closer to the checklist release date. But jumbo relics is what Immaculate is really one of those things that Immaculate is known for. They've put huge pieces of football, they've put helmets, they've put, you name it, shoes, anything you want into it. They've sort of cut it up and put it in Immaculate in the past. So really cool, excited to see that. We're going to see some inscriptions, which is my jam personally. Like if you look at, autograph content since, I don't know, 1996. Like by now, most of the people, including a lot of the wrestlers, have signed probably 100,000 trading cards. It's like some crazy number like that. But what we haven't seen a lot of, and some level of it, but when the wrestlers sort of take the initiative to do it, like Johnny Gargano or Adam Cole, or I think Kairi Sane had a few, where they sign the cards in a special way because they recognize that the card is a 101 or whatever. For the first time, we've started to see that Panini is actively associating inscriptions with the product set. So, like, you have cards that we've seen Dolph Ziggler preview, we've seen cards that we've seen as part of the other wrestlers that have signed already. There's going to be inscription cards that are part of this product. That is completely awesome. Like, for a lot of wrestling collectors, and especially the autograph collectors like me, inscriptions make a really added sort of feature to an autograph. You can have like their nickname, their gimmick names, that, like, because every wrestler has like parts of their persona that are tied to specific descriptors, whether that's the Man Becky Lynch, or the Rattlesnake Stone Cold Steve Austin, or somebody like the Dead Man for the Undertaker. I mean, everybody has a nickname or something like that because it's part of the wrestling experience. Some of them also have like different aspects of their personality that we really like to see be inscribed, or like a championship number or something like that. Yeah, I think for the first time, this is going to be one of those times where Panini's actively seeking that out. Additionally, for that, we're going to see a lot of acetate cards, which I think, if I had to guess, like the shadow box signatures that were previewed, one of the wrestlers signing those, I think it was Indy Hartwell, maybe. The shadow box signatures are really thick cards, and they are a layered sort of like configuration. So it's like an acetate top, and then it like sort of like creates like a gap with like a spacer, and then the back of the card. They look really, really cool. They've done them in football, and they've done them in other places. So I think we're going to get those in wrestling cards. I don't know what they're going to look like, or how they're going to be built, but in the past, that's what they've been. We're also seeing more of the jumbo relic autographs that we saw in Impeccable's sort of on card, combined with National Treasures, like the larger size relics. So Impeccable, we had like the 1.5 by 1 size swatch. They were kind of small, but we still got some really cool content. Same with Select, which were stickers. So really, this is now the first real big sort of card that has an on-card signature. National Treasures had a really sort of big space for the relic. It was, I think, 3 by 2 or something like that. So there's a lot of space for really cool stuff to be shown. And we saw like Roman's 101 with the championship belt and stuff like that. That was really cool. But for the first time, these are going to be on card sort of jumbo relics, which are great. We also see that they're doing a Hall of Fame set, which no one is upset about. Like, really cool to see that there's a true focus on the big names of the business. I'm hoping we're going to get, the first Hall of Fame Undertaker cards. We'll see Stone Cold Steve Austin. We'll see Triple H. We'll see all the normal people that, sort of are consistently featured in those sets. Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, whatever. So really cool. And the set looks awesome. We saw yesterday, I posted on Twitter, Hacksaw Jim Duggan signing his. So they look really good. But yeah, Immaculate is going to be a really awesome set, and we're going to see Panini really for the first time bring booklets to a forefront here. We saw the Bloodline one that was featured in the sell sheet, so really excited to see if there's other ones of those. Like, that seems like it's going to be a featured card, but that doesn't usually mean that there isn't the only one. So maybe we get other things that could be a part of that too. But yeah, overall, I'm so excited for Immaculate. If they do end up finishing the card year with another set, whether that's maybe another sort of collector friendly set, or maybe one that's a little bit more premium, or one that is ultra premium, I have no idea. I have not gotten any information about that. But seeing that it's an odd number of products at 7, that seems a little weird. But it could end with Immaculate. It could get one more before April, and then heading into April, we'll start to see the beginning of the next card year, which I'll get to here in a second. So really excited to finish out 2022 with Immaculate, if that's the way it goes, because that's going to be so much fun. And I think those cards, from a legacy perspective, are really some of the best that Panini makes. It's the most consistently well-designed product that Panini has made in a while. I'm not a huge fan of the Immaculate name, but by now it's been around since the early 2010s. So we're going to start to see how these legacy products, these ones that have driven the legacy of Panini in the new hobby era, how they will sort of cross over to a wrestling audience that hasn't seen them before. I'm really excited. There's going to be some fun stuff there. Let's talk about now leading into 2023 card year, which is likely going to start around WrestleMania again with a new edition of Prism. And I think this is where things are going to get really, really interesting. Last time Prism was released, we saw just an enormous reaction from the hobby, whether that was positive or negative. Um, the first set of Prism, the first debut set, is always one that people chase. And that drove a huge amount of speculation, despite the fact that we were on the precipice of an economic downturn. And we saw what happened after that with the hobby taking a nosedive in a number of different areas. But, Prism as a legacy brand, as I've mentioned a couple of times, this is the flagship set for Panini Wrestling and for Panini and for the Panini Wrestling brands. And for a long time, Prism has always led the charge. It's always been the brand that sets the tone. And I think we're going to get a really interesting sort of new look at Prism this year for a number of reasons. One, Panini never really goes backwards. They always sort of add and improve as much as they can over what they believe to be sort of the standard. So if you start one year with a certain number of parallels that are designed a certain way, the next year they will build on that and build on that and build on that until 2026 when they lose the license again. So I think the second year of Prism should be a lot better than the first. It should have probably a smaller checklist. There won't be as many people to throw at it. You're going to see more parallels. You're going to see more patterns. So instead of just having things just deliver a flat gold, you may have gold wave instead of gold. You may have the blacks have a pattern on the stock. They usually sort of just build and build and build and build and build. And it's really cool to see because it sets expectation that things continually grow rather than shrink, and I think that will be a good indicator that Panini is still very invested in this brand. I think we'll get new themes for the autograph sets. We'll get a bunch of first-time debuts: Cody Rhodes, Ronda Rousey, Bray Wyatt, you name it. Like those are Prism debuts, which will carry value for those stars. You're going to see people chasing the black one-on-ones. You're going to see people chasing those gold because they are again. Roxanne Perez is another one. Nikita Lyons is another one. Like there's a lot of new people in WWE that weren't around for the first go around, and considering how large that checklist was, it's cool that there's still people that are valuable that are worth bringing back for a second time around. Um, you know, as we get into Prism, like it's gonna breed a lot of comparisons to the first year. And even though I believe that as a whole, the first year of Prism was an enormous success, the wax didn't reflect that. I think the speculation around the cards pushed things well into an overheated level, and then it crashed with because it was a niche hobby item in a fringed area that the hobby was on the precipice, as I said before, of falling down a big hole. So, it was clear to see that as people were seeing, hey, maybe this isn't the developed market that we thought it was. They ducked out, and that's what saw a humongous drop in the value of the wax. However, even recently, we're still seeing enormous success in the original sort of Prism cards. And rather than getting into that whole discussion, translating that into the next year, like there are people in this set that I think are going to drive a huge amount of value. People like Roxanne Perez, who drove a huge aspect of the product in Select, and her mezzanine card is in just giant prices. And then again in Chronicles. So I think overall Prism 2023 is going to be really, really good. As we get into the other parts of the 2023 card year, I think there's going to be probably a pretty good understanding that the existing sets from 2022 will translate into a 2023 set configuration. So the ones I think have the most potential to probably be let go in favor of new configurations, maybe they come back. with something different other than Revolution. Maybe they go a different direction with Impeccable. I have no idea. I mean, like, there's so many different aspects of these sets that I think Panini likes to create a legacy in saying and a loyalty in the brand. So I think we get all of the ones from 2022, we get into 2023. I'm guessing we're going to see, I mean, I think there's no doubt that we're going to see Prism. I think there's no doubt we're going to see Select. I think we're absolutely going to see Chronicles again. Then it's just a matter of what actually is sort of filling in those other gaps. So if we know Select is going to come back, we know hopefully that that's going to be an improvement. Maybe we get this year, maybe we start to see some of the trademarks of a Select set, like the die cut cards or new patterns or new types of parts of that set. Like, I think Select 2022 was the best, one of the best wrestling products ever released, and it was just so much fun to collect. It was so much fun to engage with. And though I had an absolute blast with Prism, like, Select was completely different. It was like a chase unlike any wrestling collector has ever had to do. Becky had 4 cards, so I was just trying to chase down like every last little parallel that I could. Plus, she had autos, plus she had relics, plus she had auto relics. Like, that was what the top level people were dealing with, and it was so much fun because the cards were awesome looking. So if we get another set design that looks as good as it did in 2022, that'll be a success. I think Chronicles has been an incredible success as well. Like, you've seen how big those National Treasures cards, the rare parallels have sold, how awesome those relics look. Like, I think we'll see Chronicles again. I think we'll see Immaculate again. I think those are the sets that usually dot every Panini calendar. So it's the other ones that I think, as much as I would like to see year 2 of the Galactics and Revolution and stuff like that, that wasn't my favorite product, even though it was something that I think delivered individual pieces of sets that were really cool. I think the NXT stuff, I mean, that might be a requirement of the license. So then it becomes like, where do you fill in something new? And that sort of leaves Impeccable and maybe an 8th spot if they decided to go that direction for 2022. But yeah, I am so looking forward to seeing how this shakes out. I think we're going to start to see details for the beginning of the card year coming up, and I think we're going to start to see a shaping of that as it's usually previewed in other sports. It usually is sort of like a port into new brands like WWE. So whatever they release in UFC and NFL, NBA, those designs usually carry over. So you can sort of keep an eye on to see how the cards are going to look. If you look at 2022, however the NFL cards were designed, that's really, or the NBA as well. Like, those are how it sort of progressed through the rest of the brands, whether that was UFC or otherwise. So I'm very excited to see how that turns out. I would keep an eye on a couple of things. Like, if if we look at the way Select was received by the community, like, I expect Panini to try and make that bigger and better. Like, which I don't know if you can take as big a set as Select was and make it bigger, but I definitely think you can add more elements to it. Like I said, Select usually has a bunch of die cut cards in it. They have a lot of different parallels, a lot more animal prints, like all sorts of awesome stuff. So I think, like, if we can start to see them start to invest more in bringing that forward, we got to look at UFC because I think that'll come out first, or those previews may come out first. Like, however that's progressing, I think UFC and WWE are kind of tied at the hip like that. And then as we get into the later part of the year, as we exit Royal Rumble and into WrestleMania, where I think Prism will be released, then we get into sort of, now the WWE is likely on the selling block. We've seen how the news have shaken out around that. So now we've probably got a new owner. The company may or may not be private. How that all sort of impacts the way that the calendar is presented, the way that the trading cards resemble that, like, new gimmicks, new people, new fun stuff. Like, Sami Zayn being the honorary Uce right now, maybe transitions into a new character once he gets kicked out. Like, there's so many things that happen in wrestling that translate so well to those trading cards. I can't wait to see. Plus, now that Panini has had one thing they didn't have before, which is time, like, how these things can get bigger and better. So, as I mentioned before, like, I think we're going to get a really awesome sort of look at a Prism set that didn't have the time crunch that it did coming out of the 1-1 start to last year. So maybe that changes a little bit. Maybe we get more cool sort of on-card content that we never had before in previous years. So all of those things for 2023 look really, really good. I think we're starting to see values for the desirable stuff in a lot of these products rival any other wrestling cards that exist. So I'm thinking that, maybe the community is looking for something to get bigger and better. So overall, like, this is going to be a fun year for that respect too. And I'm going to get into sort of what to watch for on the market side as well here in a second. The market for WWE has been a really interesting wild ride over 2021 and 2022. And it's sort of like continuing to be a really weird experience for somebody like me, because cards are selling at prices that you don't expect them to sell at when they are exceptionally rare and exceptionally desirable. But when they're sort of just there, the cards are kind of treading water in value, or dropping. So, like we're seeing across the hobby now, a lot of these cards that are one of a kind, super rare, super desirable, top names, like, those have really gone up in value and have really sort of found a niche audience of really heavy spenders that can go in and buy a lot of these cards against major competition. Um, for me personally, I've kept an eye on things like Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, whatever, and when there is a really desirable Stone Cold Steve Austin or The Rock card, like, it has maintained a lot of the momentum as it started 2022 with. But I think, like, there are some aspects of the ones where there are super collectors involved that drive just a huge market for a lot of these cards. So, like, I go up against competition with Becky all the time. There's two guys that I fight with over everything, and so we sort of go back and forth. And when there's similar situations in other, wrestlers or other cards, like, a lot of that same stuff happens. You see that with super fractors, you see that with the black parallels and select, you see that with the black parallels and prism. Like, when there's a card that a super collector must have, like, those prices have gone much higher than I expected them to go. Like, we saw, like, the Alexa Bliss National Treasures 1 of 1 go for $3,000. We saw the Roman Reigns 1 of 1 sell privately for a huge amount of money. Like, those cards are defining statement pieces for a collection, and when that is the case, they're like, the prices are really going up. And I think you're starting to see a vast separation between the top end of the wrestling market and everything else. And I remember when we first started talking about Panini products, there was like a value spectrum that I showed, where it had, like, the head of the table was like Roman Reigns and The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin and Hulk Hogan and so on and so forth. Like, those guys have kind of cooled off a little bit, because everybody is kind of recognizing, like, okay, I'm not going to be in the market for those, so I'm going to start focusing on other areas, which have been those top tier guys that aren't sitting, like, way way up there, the ones that drive value in their own sort of right. And when you get into a situation where people are competing, and in wrestling cards it happens a lot, because wrestling cards are collectors are traditionally either set collectors or super collectors. There's very few people that just buy to buy, and there's very few people that buy to invest. So, the existing community, now new people have come in and sort of shook that to the core, but the existing community has kind of leveled up in a lot of ways, because they've started to recognize, like, this is the new world order for life. And, like, when you look at the new world order, like, they want to be a part of this because it's fun and it's exciting and it's challenging. And so the community is leveled up in that way. So when these desirable cards hit, they're spending $2,500 on a Solo Sokoa, optic superfractor. they're spending money they're spending money on cards that traditionally wouldn't have touched $500. Now they're spending much, much more money, because they've started to recognize that there's a lot more value in the hobby. There's a lot more people that they were going to have to compete with. So as we get into 2023, as we start to see these new sort of cards have alternate versions, right? So there's no longer just one Prism Black. There's now two. There's now more than one Ringside Black. There's now more than one, of everything. How do the values of the originals fare versus the values of year two? Number one. Number two, how do you look at the new desirable people like Cody Rhodes, like Roxanne Perez, people that haven't had these landmark cards yet. All of that becomes a very interesting sort of dichotomy versus 2022. As you get going into these types of situations where you're going to have competition for new super collectors, for new set collectors, year two of impeccable numbers, like stuff like that, how do those values change? I believe that for year two, they're probably going to be equal or maybe a little bit less, but you'll start to see a momentum start to build because the sins of the past will be washed away by recency bias, and you're going to start to see a lot more people want to sort of like move on with the discussion because you can't live in anger over Prism 2022 forever, especially as we get into year 3 and 4, where now it's a standard. Now it's something that people have come to understand is going to be there every year. So all those people that had all the question marks about the hobby around how Panini coming in would change things now have a solidified historical value perspective. They have a much more clearer roadmap on how these things perform. All of that changes. And this is what I've been saying since the beginning. This is a long-term marathon, not a sprint. And when you look at it as a sprint, it's easy to see that there's all these little fluctuations up and down. But as the economic downturn shakes out, as things continue to go for the economy and the hobby and everywhere, like the hobby could go like this over the next 2 years. It could go back up. So you don't know which of those things are going to happen. And I think as we get into these later years, the originals, the debuts are going to be that much more valuable. Now, year two is going to be a really cool indication of, is that really going to happen year two, or are we going to have to wait further on? Is it ever going to happen? I think those are all questions that we have a lot of sort of people weighing in on. Some, just don't really care and they just want to have fun collecting their guys. So I think overall, this is going to be one of those years in 2023 where we start to get a true picture of like what the value looks like. There's a definite possibility it could tank, but I hope it doesn't. I hope that the people who collected these cards in previous years come back to collect cards again. And I think we're going to see a lot of really fun stuff happen, especially as Panini levels up their sets. So, in conclusion, this next year could end up being one of the more important years in wrestling cards for a lot of different reasons that I've already mentioned, but also because this is the first year that we're starting to see the remnants of the boom clear out from a lot of different aspects of the hobby. How is it going to relate when those remnants clear out of WWE 2? We saw huge prices at the end of 2021 start to come down to 2022. 2023, we're starting to see like the big desirable hits still command huge amounts of money. So then it just becomes like, where does the roller coaster go next? And if you're a collector like me who just focuses on a laser with a laser on your PC, like nothing is probably going to change. Like you're just going to keep doing what you're doing. But if you're somebody that's using this as a means to an end, investment wise or otherwise, like this could be one of those years that everybody is looking for answers, looking for the answers to the questions that were asked in 2022. Is wrestling a long term sort of place on stage, or is it going to continue to fall off? Or is wrestling going to continue to go up and get more people involved, become more fun? I still get messages on Instagram all the time of like, hey, I saw your collection and it inspired me to start take a look at wrestling cards, and I forgot that the nostalgia of why I loved wrestling when I was a kid. Or hey, this is something that I was really excited about coming in. I left after the Prism debacle. Now I'm back because things seem fun again. Like there's a lot of people who have become a part of this hobby that weren't a part of this a year ago, and I think they are looking for continued inspiration to be part of it long term. So all of this is going to be a big deal, and I'm really excited to see how it turns out. I think Panini did a great job with their launch, and that's coming from somebody that's hated everything that Panini has done for a very long time. This has been one of those really fun experiences. Can't wait for 2023. Thanks again, guys.